Today's dash cam that we will be installing is ThinkWare's FA200. Now this is my go-to piece. This is what I typically install on most of our customers that are looking for a simple solution that also has parking mode. The reason why I pick this style of dash cam is you can see it's very low profile. So what it does is you can actually look at the footage through your phone. You hook up to the Wi-Fi network. The reason being is if you want to transmit video and audio, Wi-Fi is kind of the only way you can do it. You can't do it through Bluetooth. And compared to dash cameras like this, these do work. They might not necessarily look as good, but the problem I have with these are they're so big. So you can see it has a suction cup, and then the unit hangs down really low, and then some have the ability when the vehicle starts up, the screen will turn off automatically. Some people have their screen on all the time. I find that's very distracting at night. This is super low key. It does tell you, like, it gives audible warnings, and it tells you when it's turning on so you know it's operating, and it does have status lights as well. But you see how nice of a clean, discreet look this is, and when it's installed it kind of looks like it's part of the vehicle. Now today's installation is going to be a hardwire install, and the FA200 only comes with the hardwire kit. There are units out there that have the cigarette lighter. I just think it looks silly though. No matter what kind of dash camera you get, you spend a bunch of money on it, you have this nice vehicle or whatever vehicle you drive, and then you have this cord dangling from the windshield all the way down to the power port. I just don't think it looks good. And then when you need to use the power port for something else, you don't use your dash camera. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to clean the glass in case there's any residue or dust on here, because you want to make sure that the camera adhesive sticks as best as possible. If you work in a shop or a garage, let the vehicle sit and climatize, like if it's a really cold day. Adhesives just don't like cold, so I try to let it warm up naturally in the shop before I stick anything onto it. So we're going to do the same for the windshield. I typically, on the smaller cameras, I put it on the passenger side behind the mirror. That way it's not a distraction to the driver. And when the driver sits in their vehicle, they don't really even notice that they have a dash camera in here. The rear camera is pretty simple. All you have to do is pick center, and we're gonna go a little bit lower because there is some sticker here. So if I have it right here, I might get in the way for the lens. So we have to accommodate for things like that. Now you don't have to be super centered. The camera does have a fisheye lens to it, so it doesn't matter too much, but if you can center it up, center it up. So when you're doing the rear camera on a vehicle with a hatch like this, what you have to do is you have to disassemble this part and take apart the boots and feed the wire through the boots. Most vehicles will allow you to have enough room to get in here, and then you can run along the headliner. Some vehicles, if it's too tight, you might have to run on the outside and back through. You would have to make the adjustment for that. It just sticks on the glass, so remove the film over here and then just stick it on. For the front camera, this is a perfect spot right beside the mirror, and then the user can still adjust their mirror without having this get in the way. Now every vehicle is going to be different, and the cool thing that we have over here is there's this cover for all the wiring in the mirror. We're going to run everything in there so it looks nice and clean. Now when you're applying this, just lightly push on the top. Don't push the full thing on because it is a really strong 3M adhesive and it's not going to let go. They do give you an extra one. If this is on here and you want to reposition it, the best thing to do is go outside with the heat gun and heat it up to reactivate the adhesive, and you can pull it off a little bit easier. But keep in mind, it's really strong, so you might have a tough time pulling on it. So make sure you get your positioning perfect before you push it on. So whenever there's a dot matrix, I try to get the adhesive all on that. The dot matrix are all these little dots. It sticks to it really well, and then when you look at the vehicle from the outside, it's nice and clean. So when I work it on, like, I try to hold it on firm for at least 10 seconds, and there's really no weight to this, but you obviously don't want to pull on it, and let the adhesive do its thing so it can cure. Now this cover is really easy to take off. Just remove that. Now on the FA200, be careful where you plug in the rear camera. It's easy to plug in the GPS, and it'll say GPS activated. If you're not familiar with these products, you might think everything's okay. So make sure you plug it into video input. So here's all our wire. So we're all strapped onto there. Now you put the cover back on. So you now see that all our wire is in the cover, and then you can see this little lip in here. So this actually just slides up, and then the bottom part just clips into the base of the mirror. So depending on the vehicle, some vehicles will have wire like this. Most modern vehicles do. If you've seen some of my other videos where I retrofit it, Gentex is actually the manufacturer for these mirrors, and they typically have the provision at the base of the mirror for this to clip in. If you buy like a GM mirror, for example, older vehicles you might not have a headliner that's easily removable like this one. So work with what you have. You might have to be a little more creative, but most of you will have vehicles with a standardized headliner, and then you can run everything nice and clean and all the way down. Now we're running the wire down the A-pillar. Luckily, we do have existing wiring here, so we will just zap strap it along neatly. That way we know it's going to not have any pinch points because it's already been laid out and tested for us. Another tip I like to do is when you're done cutting, just move it to the back. This does not make it perform any better, it just looks nicer. Also, those of you that are dealing with vehicles that have airbags, side current airbags, you're going to have to run the wire behind it. This is just for extra measure of safety. Now, typically they don't deploy in this area. They deploy further back, but we don't know. So just take the extra time, take apart the A-pillar and run the wires behind the airbag and run it down. If you're not comfortable with that, have a professional do it. And for this application, we ran all the wiring inside the headliner to meet up with our front camera. Now this is where the install can get a little bit involved as far as newer vehicles go, because on this particular vehicle, all these wires are constant. So you can see here, like none of them actually on this particular vehicle switch. I even checked the fuses. A lot of times I'll use a fuse adapter, so unfortunately I can't. I do preferably try to hardwire. I try to avoid fuse adapters whenever I can. So what we're doing here is, because when we do remote starters, we grab ignition over here. Some people might be saying those like you can't do that, it's not safe. Well, we do it for remote starters. So for extra caution, I'm putting a 3-amp fuse in line and also a diode. This diode is actually overrated. It's rated for 6 amps because they can get hot depending on how much amperage you're flowing through it. This wire is only for signal. We're not actually driving the system with this particular wire. So when this wire goes hot, it'll send it to our camera. But if for some reason the camera has some sort of failure or malfunction, if it tries to backfeed voltage back up the line and hold ignition on, it can't, because the diode will block it. It will only allow voltage to go, positive voltage to go this way. And if we get a short of some sort, our little 3-amp fuse will pop. So let's say we wanted to use the fuse panel for power. We would use a fuse tap like this. And you can see that there are 2 spots for fuses. So if you're hooking up an auxiliary device, it would go over here, and then the original device goes here. Now, I don't know if other videos cover this. When you are selecting a fuse that you're going to tap power into, just don't pick whatever's ignition or accessory. Go into the owner's manual, go into the legend that comes on the cover if it states what it is. Choose devices that are not main devices. Like, don't pick PCM or airbag, for example. Pick like power mirrors, or pick like power port. That's actually on auxiliary. The reason why I'm saying that is if you have something malfunction or get a short, you don't want it to pop the main fuse for whatever reason on your, let's say, your engine computer, because then the vehicle is going to shut off. Now, a lot of people might not realize this. I have the luxury in my shop. We carry a variety of fuses. I'm not sure why manufacturers create so many different types of fuse styles. It's probably just to cut costs or just engineering for the sake of engineering. Every car is different, so if you're going to go this route, make sure that you know the style of fuse that's in the vehicle so you have the appropriate style to go in. Now all our wiring is cleaned up, so you can see we are using the factory spot for the zap strap. So that's the original one. Then we've added one over here, and then we're laying everything all the way back with the steering column. That way when it tilts up and down, we have room for articulation. Not going to pinch on anything. We have all our excess tucked here and zap strapped to the factory harness. Now our ground is right there. Now some people say that they want to hit the sheet metal on the kick because that's a better ground. They don't believe in the subframes. I've never had an issue, and I've always tested these subframes and they don't really show any resistance. So I trust them. And the reason why I trust them, especially on a device like this, when you're using a self-tapper and you're drilling through, it is significantly thicker than the sheet metal. I've seen so many times people use an impact, pound in a self-tapper if they can't find a factory ground bolt, and they just strip the sheet metal and then they make another hole. You're less likely to do that with this. And then we also add this lock washer. So I put the ring down on the mating surface first for ground. Then I put this down, and then we use the self-tapper. What that does is it prevents the self-tapper from backing out over time. And you guys can see with everything laid out with all the factory wire, you can still access the fuses really easily. Now, some people might be asking, Why did I specifically go for ignition? Because on the key tumbler, you have your ignition position, like you have accessory, and then you have, this is, the first one's accessory, the next one's ignition. So some people might be asking, why would you pick ignition? The reason being is, let's say you're just parked, you're having lunch in the truck, and you just want to listen to music. I don't want the camera running and just using up more energy from the battery. I would prefer the camera only to run when the engine is on. It still has parking mode, so if someone backs into your truck or your car, it's still going to make that recording, but we're going to reduce the amount of power we're going to use. So now you guys can see why I prefer to put it on that side, because from the driver's perspective, you have no idea it's there until you look around. And here's our vantage point from the front of the vehicle. You see, very discreet, looks like it's supposed to be there. And then let's look at it. You can't really notice it. You can see it between the Chevy logo on the left over there, between the Y and the Chevy logo. Yeah, it just works out perfectly in this particular vehicle. Okay, let's go ahead and test. So we turn on ignition, wait for the status light, and then it'll give us notification that what mode it's in, which will be continuous recording.
Continuous recording will now start.
All right, so now we are connected through a phone to our dash camera. So this is the advantage with this particular unit. It allows us to do this. We can check for front and rear. So we're going to now check the rear. Make sure that it doesn't get blocked by a sticker. Perfect. So it's right in between the sticker, and we have a good vantage point of what is behind us. And back to the front view. So you don't have to have this on all the time, but if you want to grab some footage off your camera directly on your phone, you can do that, or just pop the memory card out and put it in your computer. And you can see through the phone, we can change all our settings. So, we're going to turn on our parking mode, change our impact sensitivity. You can all do it through the app.